mute. We'll be having, oh, and we're being recorded. We'll be starting in about a minute or two. We just want to welcome you all for being here. I'm Jason Reeves, and we'll do a little formal introduction in just a minute.
We're hoping everyone's doing well, not spending too many hours on the computer and virtual chats and virtual instruction. Martha's smiling there, like she is spending way too much time doing that. I think we all are. Alex, are you growing out your beard? Yeah. I'll put something in the chat here. Oh, that's not so good up there.
Interesting question. Something to prove to your administration that we attended the seminar. I think we could probably set something like that up. Like it's Brian. Well, we have a log. We're going to record our chat, and since you put that into the chat log, I will make it a point to follow up with you with that. If you wanted to make sure that you leave your email. We actually have a place where we'll be collecting some questions, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. Maybe it might be better to leave that your contact information there as opposed to the chat. Okay, what say you, Phyllis? You want to give me
Emily? Oh, Brian Tickler, where are you? I don't see you on here. All right, all these are my colleagues and friends and people I've mentored over the years, and one of my students even.
Oh my goodness. From
about 50 years ago. No, not that long ago. She's still young. Wow, look at everyone here. All right, so are we ready to get going, Jason?
I'm ready when you are. Devin, if you want to go ahead and mute your microphone so we won't hear the doorbell. All right. If I can maybe set off the, okay. So Phyllis, if you want to get us, if you want to get started, I'm going to put on our screen, our shared screen for everyone to have a look at.
All right, well, welcome everybody. This is our adventure into online education. And ironically, of course, it's a little meta online. We're going to share with you some curriculum that we developed for an online independent study. And hopefully it will really help you all out in this little adventure we're having, this COVID-19 adventure we're all having. So I'm Phyllis Goldsmith. I've been at the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project for, I think, 18 years, and I taught in Oakland for almost 15 years before that. And it's been a really interesting couple of weeks here as a consultant for many schools. So I'm really thrilled to share with you some things, hopefully, that will be helpful to you. And Jason?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jason Muniz, and I too work for the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project. I am now, I guess, coming up on like the 9th or 10th month with the project, but I've been a teacher in Oakland Unified School District for 7 years prior, and a few years outside of the state of California for that. So we're working with, I guess, a lot of former teachers in the space presently in our presentation. And I also would like to make sure before we get too far, there's also going to be another person working with us today. That's Devin. Devin, you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, or?
Super quick moment. Hi, I work with the project as well. I know a number of you. I've been with the project for about 6 years, and I'm here just to kind of support them in the background. I'll be answering a lot of your chat questions as I can.
All right. Okay, so again, we thank you and appreciate your being here with us today. I want to take a moment to share with you some of the norms that we have for our workshop today, just because there are going to be so many people that are coming into the room and a lot of different um, people to navigate and some difficult things. We want to make sure we have these norms in place. Please know that participants, when they're coming in, are coming in muted. You should be aware of that if you're here with us right now. If you wouldn't mind selecting the speaker view, that'll make some of the work that we're doing a little bit easier today. You'll see that there is a chat function. Many of you have used Zoom before, so you know there's a chat. We're asking that you sort of use chat only when we direct you to use it. And if you have questions about what you're seeing or what's going on, there's actually a link which is on the screen right now, bit.ly/0407_questions. And that will take you to a Padlet where we have a resource to collect any questions that you may have during the actual presentations. Anything that you have, technical, pedagogical, anything that's going to be just a comment or just a way that we can provide additional support, please send those questions or those comments to that page. And we are actually going to be recording the session today to post it on the UC Berkeley Professional Development Provider website afterwards. And that includes anything that goes in the chat box or any questions that you may have on video later on. So if you don't want to be recorded, this might be a good time to turn the camera on your Zoom session off. All right. With that said, Phyllis, take it away for a little bit, please.
All right. Oh, got a little echo here. So I want to just tell you a little bit who we are. I know many of you already know us, but we're doing this through a community of practice, and you can see all those logos there. This is a group of people from at UC Berkeley that all do professional development for K-12 teachers. You can see there's Cal Performances, Bay Area Writing Project, Arias, etc. And this group has been together since 2017, trying to meet and coordinate their efforts. And you know, we're all trying to be the link between the K-12 and the university and the academic institutions. And those of you that don't know, I know that probably most of you know UC Berkeley History Social Science Project, because I know so many of you, but we have been in existence since the late 90s. We're one of the California single subject matter projects. We are throughout the state. We do content. We do content development. We do backwards mapping, literacy, academic literacy. We work a lot with historical thinking and disciplinary thinking. And we do a lot of engagement strategies and culturally relevant pedagogy and curriculum. And additionally, one of our newer initiatives has been to go into the civic action realm and try to support teachers as they start to develop their communities of activism and civics in their classrooms.
So we also wanted to give you a moment to kind of look over what we're going to be discussing today. So if you're here today, ideally you're here because you want to learn about the independent study unit that Phyllis and I developed. And so we'll be modeling that and be sharing the context of which we created and the rationale for that unit. It makes a little bit more sense what we're presenting once you understand why we created what we created and why we're sharing that with you. We also wanted to share with you an example of the lesson plans that we've developed and some ways that you can actually use that for independent study, be it paper examples of strategies that we'd be rolling out for the specific audience we created this for that would be applicable for your students potentially, or digital remote learning processes that we'd like to show you that we think would be effective as well. We want to give you a little bit of an overview of the unit that we developed and give you a little bit of a talk about some of the strategies that we are focusing on. And of course, we'll save some space at the end for questions and some inquiries about next steps and some of the other things we offer. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end of our session today to do that. One last thing I wanted to point out, once again, there is going to be at the bottom corner of the page whenever we can, that link to show you where you can ask questions. We're going to try and avoid as much as possible the chat just because it becomes a little bit of a distraction and we'd like for folks to kind of focus on what we're presenting and not necessarily tear us away to kind of answer individual questions. We will do our best to get to every single one of those questions that you pose inside the Padlet. And at the end, I think we'll have a little time for some frequently asked questions and hopefully address some of the bigger concerns then. So without any further ado, Phyllis, wouldn't you mind just tell us a little bit about the rationale and context?
So this is really the culmination of work that we've been engaged in for a long time. Thinking about how to embed historical thinking and academic literacy in content. We know that our kids in California really need a lot of literacy. And the historical thinking piece is really about helping them gain the skills to think historically and do the critical thinking skills that they need in order to make sense out of the content. It's really about helping them, giving them a lens or criteria for evaluating the information that they're learning, and then also linking it in their synthesis so that they can put it together as they're learning. Another one of the premises and another exciting thing that we've been working on in the last few years is connecting larger topics to local history. So through this work that we've done, we've tried to centralize the work in terms of making the connections to California and California history. It's a whole approach that we developed with some support of the Stewart Foundation. We call it Making History, and there's a link right there to some of the materials that are on our website. And then lastly, the other thing that we've tried to do in terms of this curriculum is connect it to the students' narratives and their identity. So to their particular local communities, and helping them make connections to their own stories and their family stories as we're doing this. We've actually developed about 7 units, but this is the only one that is really an independent study unit. The place that we really started developing these for are the court and community schools. The court schools are for the incarcerated kids in juvenile hall. They get pretty much direct instruction. Well, not now so much. They're being homeschooled by guards at the moment. But in general, they have teachers that are doing direct instruction with them right in their cell blocks. And then the community schools was a new contract we got where the kids that have been expelled and suspended from your schools, and even the continuation high schools, are supported by the county community schools. All these children that we developed this curriculum for have pretty much major literacy issues. I'd say about half the children in the juvenile hall have IEPs. They almost all have very interrupted education. They've been sitting in the detention centers in your schools and in and out of jail and different homes. And then as we moved this curriculum from the incarcerated kids in direct instruction to the community schools, we needed these to be independent study. Most of the kids in the community school are doing independent study, but they don't all have access to the technology. And so we had to make it independent study, both digitally for kids that had the technology, and paper packets that they meet once a week with their teachers, and paper packets that they could write on. And the last thing I want to say about the context is that these 2 schools there's more than 2 of them, but these 2 parts of the county schools have been aligning their social studies with an English language arts program that integrates social emotional learning. And so we have been aligning the themes and the content of our social studies to integrate into that, and they alternate days between social studies and English language arts. All right, so here we go. Here is an example of a lesson page. This is for the teachers' use, really. I wish I had a whole week of an institute to go over how this is constructed, but I'm going to try to do it in 5 minutes. This is one lesson, the 3rd lesson of a civil rights unit, which we will get to the map of the unit later on. And this one is dealing with California. So you can see it says high school level, but there are middle school kids that are using this too, because the kids are 11 or 12 through 19 inside of juvenile hall, and also in the community schools. those of you that know our work will find the familiar parts of a unit focus question. So even though this is a civil rights unit, it is really about how did people in California fight for civil rights during the 1960s. We look specifically at the context of our state. The historical thinking that they're practicing throughout this whole unit is continuity and change. So they're looking at similarities and differences between different groups over time. And this particular case study, each one of the lessons is really a case study. We in an effort to make the connections, we didn't want to try to do it as a comprehensive overview where you're just covering things, but having them understand one instance fairly deeply. So this one's how did Latinos organize and improve conditions for farm workers? Okay, so I'm going to actually take you through a paper packet so that you can see the repeated skills that we do over and over again. You can see, and we'll talk a little bit about how the paper packet, you can see the lessons that it consists of. So if you wanted to just get a single lesson, but this is what a packet of one of the sub lessons looks like. It has the lesson focus question on the top, and then the sub lesson is why the farm workers organize. I want to show you what the assignment page is, and Jason later on will show you the digital page. So this is the assignment page the kids get. The little checkoff boxes there so that the kids can check off their work as they do it. The previous lesson's always the first thing. And then we have used 3 repeated strategies only in these lessons. One is a reading strategy, and I'll explain it a little more thoroughly, and we're gonna give you a chance to practice it. So we have excerpts of text that they do a reading strategy. The other one is a visual analysis strategy, and oftentimes they're comparing visuals. And the last one is a video strategy, video analysis strategy. And these are all very short videos. I think none of them are longer than 5 minutes. The kids don't have a lot of attention span in the incarceration. Okay. I will go into much more detail, but you can see that this reading strategy, which we call headings and highlights, for those that have seen it before, every document has a little background information on it, so that the kids, because we're kind of jumping in for these case studies, to give them a little bit more, to orient them to these documents. I'll explain headings and highlights in just a moment after I show you the other strategies. So this is the visual analysis strategy. And in this one, they actually have this lesson, they actually have 3 visuals. You can see there's a little background information with the sourcing. And then there's a chart down here that this is repeated, though there's some things that we've done specifically for them, for each one of these things, where they're doing this visual analysis strategy where they're listing what they see, making inferences about what those details mean, and then they ask questions. And then the last thing they do is they write a caption which kind of summarizes how these visuals are helping them answer the focus question. So what information or evidence did they gather from it? And then they write a paragraph about those images, helping them synthesize how the images help them answer the focus question of the lesson. And we put in sentence starters because of the particular population that we were working with. They're pretty generic, but the kids that in the populations that we're working with tend to like to use them. Some of them that are a little more advanced ask if they can ignore them. And of course, if they have that ability, they should just go ahead and write their own paragraphs. And we've just done an expository paragraph there. You can see claim, evidence, and analysis in each one of those paragraphs. So they're getting a lot of practice with expository writing there. And lastly, the last strategy that we're using in a repeated fashion, again, are video clips. And the kids that are doing it paper packet usually watch the clips on their phone. You can see again that there's a background information, there's a little video, and then there's a similar chart to the visual analysis that is having them explain what the events in the video, how they help answer the question. And I want to just show you one more thing here, which is Jason and I then have designed little comprehension and analysis questions to help them go further in evaluating the video. I've noticed, because I go in and observe the teachers in the classrooms, that the videos are so short that they often have the kids watch them 2 or 3 times in order to really fill out the chart and really use them in a way to help them with their use the evidence from them, because they're short, but they're packed full of information. All right. So I want to spend a little bit of time, just a few moments, explaining headings and highlights. And for those of you that use it often, excuse me, but there is an audience that's nationwide here. So I want to back up a little bit and explain this particular, and in fact, the person who designed this is on this call, and his name's Brian Tickler. So kudos to him. It's been modified many, many times by many, many people. And this is yet one more modification for independent study. It's very useful for any kind of text in your classroom, and very generative, great conversations and rereading when you use it. The idea is that the text has been divided up. The headings are taken off it. So if you're using a textbook with headings, we generally take the headings off, maybe even using that amount of text, depending on if it's an AP textbook or a regular textbook or an elementary school textbook. And then you need to look at the text, and you divide it up into sections, and the kids read through it. And after they've read through the section, they give that section a heading. And we say 5 words or less because we don't want them to do this section is about, and then go ahead and tell everything about that section. It's really more about them figuring out what the gist or the main idea is of it and naming it. The more experience the kids have with that, the more clever and deep analytical their headings become. And they actually have a lot of fun with that. In a regular classroom, you would have them compare. And you would have them compare, and they are very sweet about how they reread the article and really start arguing about what that section is about. I want to just tell you the last 2 parts of it, because then we're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to ask you to practice the heading part of this. But the second part of this is that they reread the section again, and they highlight or circle or underline, whatever your annotation markings are, the words, phrases, or the sentences that act as the evidence to support their heading. This really helps a lot with the yellow paragraphs. So when the kids get on their own and they start doing annotations, they no longer will underline every single thing, because they're going to have to write those phrases down to support their sentence that they're going to write. And in the final step of this strategy here, this section where they're going to write a sentence that helps them answer that focus question, the lesson focus question. So you can see as they go through the article, they're going to gain more and more evidence to answer that question. And their answer, by the time they get to the last section of the article, will be pretty thorough then, and be able to use a lot of evidence from this particular paragraph. So I'm going to hand this over to Jason, one of my colleagues, and he's going to help us break you guys out into rooms, and you guys are going to get to practice this with a couple of other people.
All right, well, thank you for that, Phyllis. So let me explain a little bit about what we're going to ask you to do. We do want you to try and replicate what the students will experience when they're doing a headings and highlight assignment. So we're going to send you all to random groups in breakout rooms. Before you head there, though, our colleague Devin is putting into chat some links that you will need for you to click on to interact with this particular assignment. Now, we've broken it out by the letters in your first name, simply because a lot of people all going on to one Google document will cause a traffic jam. It's a little bit easier if we break you out through your first name. So if your first name is A through G, there's one link for you, H through N, another link, etc. And if you want to go ahead and click those now, that's great. Otherwise, those links will still be there once you're in the breakout room in the chat function there as well. Let me give you a little bit of a heads up about what you'll be doing once you're in the breakout room. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to click the link that you're given, as we're providing right now, and then read the paragraph in the background and the text boxes. Maybe not so much the background if you have an idea about the United Farm Workers and you know that history, but if you already know about that, then just go ahead and read the text that's in the text box, and we're going to be challenging you all, once you have read that, to collaborate with the people in your breakout room to create a heading for the content in the text box. What we're really asking you to do is, once you have read it, talk to the people who are in your breakout room and see if you can all come to a consensus about what the 5-word or less heading should be. Now, we'll give you about 5 or 6 minutes to do that. And once your group has come up with a common heading, choose someone who will share it with the larger group when we return back from the breakout rooms. So once again, you'll be sent out to the breakout rooms with a link to an information page that you see similar to the one that you're looking at right now. There's also these instructions that are appearing on the screen are also included on that linked page as well. And again, you want to get together with the people in your breakout room and come to a consensus about what the best 5-word or less heading would be for the text in that box. If you have any questions, we'll try to do our best to answer those for you, but it's pretty self-explanatory, and we'll be bringing you back from the breakouts in just a little bit. So without further ado, Devin, if you want to go ahead and send our participants to their breakout rooms, we'll look for. All right, Devin, I think there may be a couple people who are not in breakout rooms that we want to make sure they get sent. So I stepped out so that way I can. And you're muted. I can't hear you, Devin.
I said I'm not seeing people who are not in a breakout room.
Okay, there was somebody who was pictured up there that wasn't, but I guess they are now in one.
I think they're all in, yeah. And now you and I got assigned to rooms too, I believe. So
yeah, I just jumped out. I just jumped right out.
Okay, I should probably jump myself out too.
Okay. All right, so I have a couple questions for you.
Okay, let me just find where I am. Fortunately, they don't allow me to. Oh, I just had to admit somebody. Okay, someone just came in. And I don't see how to put them into a breakout room. Unassigned, there we go, okay.
Okay. And folks, if you're just joining us, you're about to be sent into a breakout room, but don't worry, you should be able to figure out what's going on pretty easily, I would imagine.
Okay.
Hey, Devin, I have a question. When people are commenting on the Padlet, do you see the notification come on the screen for our shared screen? Have you noticed that by any chance?
I see it in the Padlet, but
Okay, because like when I'm like directing people with the push screen feature, the shared screen, I'm wondering if like because I get notifications whenever somebody makes a new comment on the Padlet.
I think that's because it's your Padlet.
So and I figured that much, but I'm wondering if you guys can see it, the notifications coming on my screen.
I don't see the notifications, but I am watching the comments and I'm talking with them.
Okay, yeah, I've noticed that. I just wondering if like if my direction of them on the screen is interrupted by all of a sudden like alert saying Padlet such and such.
I'm not seeing your screen do that. I'm not seeing your screen do that. Because when you share a screen, you can share a particular window. If you shared your whole screen,
Right,
but if you're sharing just the window, then that doesn't happen.
I was hoping I did it that way, so I'm like hoping that I did it right. I guess is my point. Like,
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Now, there's some questions that are more relevant to. Hold on a sec. I got to assign someone to a room. Someone came in. You want to? Hello, Jennifer. We are in breakout rooms right now that are going to end in half a minute. So
no.
Just hang tight there.
I have us at a minute 58 left.
That's not what. Oh, okay. It's going to do a 60-second countdown in just a minute.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that tracks. Oh, that tracks.
I
wonder if that was enough time.
I don't know. So you do see some questions there on the.
Yeah, someone brought up the content and like the video actually goes into a bit more depth, I think, of Filipinos.
Jason, I'm getting the prompt to go ahead and close the room. Do you want me to do that? It'll give 60 seconds more.
Yeah, give him the 60 seconds more. So yeah.
Okay.
So at this point now. Yeah.
All right. It gives them the option of returning to the main room between now and then.
Yeah, and certain people.
And a lot of them are coming in. Okay.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We'll be getting started once we have our critical mass of participants back in the space. All right. And we'll...
Everyone should be back now, Jason.
Okay. Phyllis, are you back with us? Let's see if we can find Phyllis.
Here I am.
Hi, Phyllis.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So it looks like everyone who is here is back, I hope. And if not, they should be joining shortly. All right. So I think this would be a good time to see if we can get a little read on how people felt that experience was using the headings and highlights.
So how about if we use the chat? The PowerPoint's no longer on my screen, Jason.
All right, I got it.
So how about if you use the chat to see, first off, were you able to come up with a heading? Why don't we have a few of your someone in the chat, why don't we put a few of the headings that you came up with? All right, cool. Farm workers strike for higher wages. Fighting for equality and fair wages. Nice. Nice. Ah, workers, wages, and solidarity. I think must be a song like that. Wages increased, union denied. Nice. Struggle for dignity in work. Awesome. So I don't want to take too long on debriefing this, but you know, did this give you a different lens for reading? Would be one of my questions about this strategy. How did it impact your reading? Someone says 1,000 times yes. Group collaboration for better pay. That's a nice one. Ben Sanders, I know him too. And so I think that I don't want to spend a long time because I want Jason to show you how to get on it digitally. But I think you can see the benefits of reading, trying to come up with the heading for it, having a discussion with the people in your group about what it was about. Yes, I know we need more time, Emily. I'm sorry, but this is an hour-long workshop. Easy to differentiate, yes. Alex Robbins, one of my English colleague, history colleague friends. Yeah, a definition of what a heading might be. Yes, Michael, we are just like super brief on this. Yes, the kids need a lot of modeling and they need to do this repeatedly, but I have found that inside the cell blocks where the kids are doing this, they will often raise their hand and say, you know, I think we've missed some critical evidence in that last paragraph. So it's really takes some modeling and it takes repeated practice, and the we do, you do, and they give each other feedback in their groups. So you can see this is a very useful strategy for, thank you, Jeff, it is a great exercise. It's really a useful strategy for not just this type of text, but many different kinds of text. Oh, Melissa's asking if doing highlighting first. You know, I think reading is an iterative process, and some kids may find out that they would like to highlight some of the evidence in order to come to their heading. I think that if kids are reading with pencils, they'll naturally do that. So again, you know, I would play with it. It's not it's not a black line master that needs to be followed exactly. It's really a cognitive skill that helps push comprehension, choosing evidence, getting main idea, evaluating evidence. Yes, it is effective for primary sources. Again, chunking it up, Alex, into smaller pieces there. And if you play with it a little bit, you'll figure out what the right size texts are for your kids. It's one way to differentiate. Some kids can't read a whole large section. They just need to go paragraph by paragraph, especially different age groups. So I would love to, you know, we could spend a whole hour on this, and perhaps we will do a session on this as a reading strategy on this platform in the next few weeks, because it's really useful. But I want to hand it back over to Jason so he can have, yeah, Sarah, it is hard to choose excerpts. Welcome to my life. I'm going to hand it over to Jason so he can show you how to get access and have the kids use the digital form of these lessons here. Okay, Jason, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And just as one last note to want to bring into focus, whenever we're doing the headings and highlights, it sometimes is a little bit of a hurdle for students to overcome, to think about how they would be able to, or for teachers to overcome, think about how you'd be able to replicate what you just experienced in this sort of breakout rooms. Ideally, we do like to do headings and highlights where there would be a little bit of student interaction. And with the distance learning that some of us are confronted with right now, that becomes a little bit more problematic to have students interacting with each other. But ideally, the best way to do this assignment is to have a group come to consensus and do this with other peers sort of reviewing and collaborating on what their headings and their details would be. But that's not always the case. And right now we're in a situation where teachers are kind of focusing on how to be able to have students do things independently. And kind of is a nice transition to what I'd like to show you, which is how to use some of these strategies and some of these lessons that we've been developing to teach your students and have them sort of guide themselves independently to sort of accomplish some of the instructional goals. So now that we're back on the lesson guide page, I want to show you a little bit how we've organized it so that teachers can actually create a lesson that would work very remotely. What I like to do is it has teachers interact with as few links, or to have asked their students to interact with as few links as possible. So all these different things that we're doing in particular in this lesson, and if you're looking at the screen, everything that's down here, you would never want to show all those different links and all those different tangents for students to click on and play with. Instead, what we have here is one digital assignment and grading page that looks like what you're about to see, that centralizes all the things that the students actually need. So instead of having a bunch of different links, this is the only thing that they would actually ever need to interact with if you want to sort of remove distractions and make it a little bit easier on them. So what I've created is a sort of link page where all the assignments that were on that previous assignment page are there now available for students to interact, as opposed to a paper handout version or a packet that they would actually get. All those different packets or handout versions are now centralized in a page where we're having all the assignments linked to Google Forms. And we looked at the headings and highlights for the rise of the UFW. So let's have a look at what that looks like in the digital version. So you share a page that looks like that. And so now the students would, instead of interacting a paper version, now they're seeing the exact same pretty much assignment now as a digital format. So of course, basic identification information, and there's that background information for them to see. You can always expand that to make it bigger if you so choose. Once they've read that background information, then again, that same piece of information, that little text box that they were engaging with before on the page, that's what they're actually seeing on the screen, engaging with on the computer version. The same assignment is though confronting them. You're asking for the 5-word or less heading. They type that in, they're typing out the words and phrases. And again, this is actually convenient for you as a teacher because it sort of keeps, these are actually images that they can't highlight and click and copy and paste. So the students are actually going to have to identify the exact words and take the moment to type them out. This will keep them from typing out or highlighting and dumping in everything. They have to find, with a little bit of precision, the exact words to have a little bit more of a precise answer, as opposed to just dumping and writing anything in that space there. And again, the assignment is the same. You're writing your sentence to explain it. You submit the form, and the students are able to do that on that particular assignment within the headings and highlights lesson. That's just one of the ways, or one of the assignments that's available for the students. Now, a lot of teachers, a lot of students, when they're confronted with the digital version, are sometimes flummoxed. They're not really sure what they're supposed to do. And what we created for the students that we were creating this for in the first place, those in the community schools and the core schools, was like a little video link, and I'm going to click one right here, that actually explains how to do the actual process of headings and highlights, a little video that breaks down exactly what to do. And so those are there for the teachers and whoever to use. And as you'll see, we have Phyllis making her video debut.
We are now going to examine a piece of text to help.
We won't embarrass her by playing the whole thing out, but basically the explanation that she shared with you is something that she's sharing with the students, if they should get the page that looks like this, to click on and provide them with a reminder about how to actually execute the actual assignment that they're dealing with. So if they're lost, if they're far away from their teachers and they don't know what to do and it's not convenient to ask, that little link will provide them a little bit of opportunity for feedback or at least some direction about how to complete the work that they're doing at any given time. And again, these all correspond with all the assignments that you see here, all correspond to the assignments that you saw on this page. Now, let's say that the students are, sorry, no, too far. Let's say that you've got some students submitting their information and they've completed the assignments. You as a teacher from your end would be able to check their work by actually clicking on the responses, and all that will do is throw you to a spreadsheet like the one you see here, where it's collected all the student responses. So again, do your grading, check for completion, however you want to manage that. That's something that you'd be able to do from this particular page. Again, all you need to do to share with the students is use that first link, the one that has all the different links, the one that you see here. That's all you would ever need to share with students. And you don't even have to share that page. You can just take the link and just put it into your Google Classroom and have them work from that, as opposed to this sort of collection page. Or if you want to give them packets, again, you can print out this page and have them collect the information as a checklist on here for completion. And, you can award them points, total grade on this as well. It's really up to you. And as Phyllis said, these are not black line masters. If you want to change and edit these, revise these to have something that makes sense for you, that's available for you to do at any given point. Yeah, that's really what we have for like the digital interaction. And again, this is just part of a bigger framework, a bigger part of a lesson. It's just an assignment set within the lessons for the bigger unit. And I think right now would be a really good time, if you want, Phyllis, to go ahead and give them a little bit, our participants, a little bit of an idea about what the bigger picture is when we're talking about the entire unit itself.
All right, so we started with a single lesson just to give you an idea of what that would look like. But you can see that this is, and again, those of you that are familiar with our work, this is an example of a backwards mapped lesson that, unit, I mean. And you can see where we were at the lesson 3 on the Latinos. The lesson, this particular unit answers the question, how did people in California fight for civil rights during the 1960s? And there's a context lesson that begins every single one of these, where the kids get more familiarized with the with either both the lead ups and some of the terms and why people did that, what initiated it. There's a case study on the Black Panthers. You can see it's not every single thing that had to do with African Americans fighting for civil rights during that time. We looked at the one on Latinos. That was the lesson we were on. There's a lesson on women, and then there's one on the free speech movement and the anti-Vietnam, the Chicano moratorium, the demonstrations for ethnic studies, etc., that students did. And then almost every single one of our units is what we would ends with some kind of about activism today. You can see that it ties then to the ways, and generally, kind of the rationale for this was that I wanted students inside juvenile hall to know that kids were actually able to accomplish things in this day and age, not that it's not just the end of their story. But I think this works for all kids, that we need to inspire our students to be the new leaders. So every one of the units that we've developed in this one ends with some kind of tie to the present day of where they might see people fighting for civil rights in this particular context. Some of them have a civic action at the end of them. It's kind of a little difficult for students that are incarcerated or the community kids to do civic action, but they're getting better at least advocating for it as they're practicing it. The only thing I wanted to point out about this unit map is, and this course level question came from the work that they were doing inside the court school. It went with they were reading March as part of this unit at the same time as they did this unit. And you can see that we did not attempt to center the civil rights on in March, which is really the South, and deals with a particular time period. So we have a course level question, we have the unit questions, and then we have a teaching thesis of what we would hope the kids might get out of the whole thing. And just for a second, just click on one of maybe a different link so that they can see that that is linked to the lesson plan. There you go. So you can see every single one of those is linked then to a lesson plan, multi-day lesson. There's all the documents with all the activities in there. It can either be done packet-wise or digitally, and every one of them ends with a writing assignment. Why don't you just click on that writing assignment, because this is probably the last time that we'll be this much detail. And generally, they are answering the unit focus question. Sometimes we change them a little bit if the unit is just the lesson is just too broad. And once again, I want to say that there's sentence starters in here. We haven't gotten much feedback on the sentence starters from our teachers that have implemented this. So any of you that do implement it, if you find the sentence starters aren't quite right, which is what happens when adults make sentence starters for kids, but they're there, and we put in the caveat for the kids that they can use them if they would like to. So that's how each one of these works. And I noticed on the Padlet when you guys were working that someone said, would this all be linked? Yes, all the hyperlinks when you use this will be available for you. So just for me in closing, this is just a how to use the unit map. I think we've already explained most of it, that you look at the unit map, you click on the lesson title, it drops down the lesson menu. You can assign the kids, you can either print it out digitally or you can make paper copies. And then depending on your context, you can assign these and either have the kids, well, now I guess you would mail them in, or they'd have to take pictures of them if they were doing it manually in this context of today. But if they're doing them digitally, you'd have a spreadsheet then with your Google Forms to look at what the kids did. And if you have any more questions about this, there's Jason's and my email addresses. Jason's going to now kind of explain how you would make your own.
Right. And so this is a lot, and you may not be at a place where you're teaching a civil rights unit right now. That may not be your instructional focus. But whatever it is, if you see some of the strategies in terms of like sharing information, using the literacy strategies, the historical thinking strategies in your own practice, we want to make sure that you're aware of what we did to construct what you've seen. Now, our primary step when we do this is to think on the bigger picture, taking that step back and come up with a unit map to create a unit focused question and a thesis that we're going to have the kids attempt to answer. Once that's done, though, then we can start to think about all the different lessons. We want there to be a context. We want there to end with something that has a civic action or current context, and in the middle, learn all the different things that we want them to focus on while identifying the historical thinking skills we want them to also be aware of too. But once that work is done, the next real part is putting this together to establish whether we want to have digital or paper versions to have our students interact with. And if it's a paper version, well, then we need to really set up those packets or those one-off assignments if you just want to do one assignment as opposed to a whole packet. Or if you want to do the digital again, to create those digital versions and be prepared to respond to what the students have produced inside those spreadsheets that you saw that I gave you a little look at before. Now, it's easy to say that, hey, just make these digital versions. But what we did was we actually created some templates to create these assignments with the strategies that we've been alluding to already embedded in there. You don't have to, as they say, reinvent the wheel. What we're going to provide you with is some resources to develop units along these lines. So those packets that you saw, we have blank templates of those packets, the visual analysis, reading analysis, video, and the digital version of the paper, like all the basically things that we showed you today, including the maps, blank ones, or unit guides, blank ones, some extra scaffolds, and even those videos that Phyllis produced that kind of explain what the assignments were and what you had to do. All those resources are going to be there for you at that link that you see right there. It's actually also embedded on the Padlet. So if you see the Padlet, you'll see like a workshop resources page. All the resources that you see here, everything that we've talked about all meeting long are there available for you to use. Feel free to make copies, use all those things. Those are really for you to sort of be creative and kind of push your work forward, hopefully using some of these tools to make it a little bit easier to do. And with that, Phyllis, if you want to just give us in our last, I guess, note here, a little bit of an idea about some of the things we had to change or some things to be aware of for those who are trying to adapt.
Okay, so I also wanted to address one thing I saw in the Padlet, which was how long, and I see Denise is asking that too. I would say that each lesson is really a 2 to 3 day lesson. It depends on if you have a block period. It depends on the literacy level of your kids. One of the teachers has asked for additional readings. He seems to go through them more quickly. Another one of the teachers takes the time, and kids do a lot of collaboration. He does extensions. So these units have been taught in a 6-week period because they either do language arts or it's really like a month to 6 weeks, but they're on a pacing chart. I'd say in a regular classroom, that probably maybe 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how often you see your kids and their literacy level and how much depth you want to take in that. as we've been putting these together and we've been reviewing them and trying to produce them, you know, a lot of things have come up. Jason and I have had a lot of discussions about the language supports that would be needed for our language learners. You know, get me a grant and I'll provide all of that for you. And I'm sure that we can do that together, or you can just figure out what you need to do for language support in these. And then the other one would be if you're using something like this, which is case study based, and you have a regular college prep class, you know, how do you integrate this into and provide extensions and longer readings, or what kind of research projects would you have the kids do? You know, that hasn't been the context that we developed them in. So these are all future, hopefully, incarnations and ways that you will all take this idea and develop it for your particular context. And you know, keep in touch with us. Let us know what you do. Share your units with us and your attempts with us, because you know, we can take it and share it with other people too. And we're always open to feedback on how it went for you.
Right, absolutely. And I think just to add one more thing regarding like the equity issues, we realize that there's a lot of disparity in how many students are able to access their work digitally. Not everybody has a computer at home. Not everybody with a computer at home has internet at home. So a lot of the solutions that we're trying to put forward are trying to work around some of the challenges that kids in a lot of different environments are experiencing. So just know that this is an attempt to sort of work around some of the challenges that some of your kids may be facing. But again, if you have other solutions that seem to be working around equity issues, we'd love to hear them, because we'd love to be able to make the work that we're doing with the project like this something that kids in a lot of different environments would have access to. So if you know a great way that you've seen somebody overcome some of those equity and access issues, we'd love to be able to retrofit and sort of change our work, modify it to be as friendly to kids in those situations as possible as well. And again, all the things we have are all on those links that we've shown you. Everything, this whole presentation is all at that resources site on the Padlet. It's there. That's the website. If you just want to copy it down, it's available for you. With that, I did want to make sure that we shared with you all that our work today is part of a larger collective called the UCB Professional Development Providers, as Phyllis mentioned before, and there is a calendar of similar professional development events that are coming up as well. So we invite you to check the link bit.ly/Berkeley PDP to see that calendar in full and see if there's any other content that could be provided for you that would be useful, that would help move your process and your instructional goals forward, considering we have, some of us anyway, a little bit of free time on our hands. So that's what I have to say about that. Phyllis, do you want to add anything else at this point?
I just want to say that I think you guys are all warriors, and I am so in such admiration of how quickly and in such dedication all the teachers are learning new things and trying to adapt their teaching for this incredibly difficult and stressful time. I also would like to say that I'm less concerned about you making sure the kids are completing their academics, but checking on their food and their housing and their mental health. I think this is a really difficult time for children, and you are the ones that care for these kids in our society. So my hat is off to you, and I really am just, you know, wish you all luck and stay well.
Yeah.
And,
One last thing, Phyllis. Oh, you forgot, Devin, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and sharing the I guess, poll. We do want to get a little bit of a feedback from you all from a Zoom poll. So if you could take a moment before you head out to fill that out. And if you have some questions and if you have some other thoughts that you want to share with us as we're leaving out, Phyllis and I will be around for a few more minutes. We're not going to cut off the Zoom right away. So if you'd like to stick around, I believe that Devin will be unmuting the microphones in just a moment. So we'll be happy to field as many questions as we can and in the next half hour or so, and maybe give you a little bit of extra support or insight around what we've done.
Do you want to field some of the questions that have come in so far?
Yeah, let's see if we can get a couple of there now since we have it open.
Okay.
What were some high
So one question was about the headings and highlights. about how to go from even getting the main idea and the evidence to being able to actually draft an answer to the focus question. How do you scaffold that leap?
Well, I'll start to answer that. I think one of the things that you will find in their discussions is that they are actually rehearsing much of that. So oftentimes one of the things I'll do if I'm modeling this in a classroom is I'll ask the kids not to write anything down yet, but to look at their main idea and the evidence that they chose, and to try a rehearsal, tell their classmate, I mean their group mates, what would they write there? And then once 3 or 4 kids have done this, have shared with each other, they have a much better idea. So I find the oral discourse to be one of the best ways to scaffold that last step.
So another question that came up around the about the time frame for a lesson, but how about for a full unit like this?
I would say probably anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on how much time you have with the kids and what else you're trying to do with them. None of the sources are very long, but there's quite a bit of evaluation and analysis in them.
Another question is about, do you have other units that are developed in this way that we can share? Get a lot of requests for world history of various types.
We
Are you
don't
planning to make more?
We as I said, I think we're on our 8th unit right now, but they're not digitized. They don't have the digital Google forms in they're linked for the teachers. They're all in fairly rough shape. The only one we really have that's world history is that goes with I Am Malala and deals with the history of Pakistan, and really in the last about 500 years, and the access of schooling for girls. They're not as polished as this one, but they exist. So maybe people could email us directly.
Another question came up about this particular unit around to what extent is the Filipino American contribution included? Because a lot of this was initiated from the Filipino activism.
So I feel like when we developed the section that you're referring to and the civil rights unit around Latinos, when we went to the United Farm Workers and used the content from there, there's a video, I believe, that goes with that section that discusses the fact that the United Farm Workers were really inspired by the work that was already done by the Filipino farm workers, and there's a little bit more about like the origins of Coachella and places like that. But yeah, so that I will say that the reason that we kind of focus a little bit more on the Latino aspect of the United Farm Workers origins is because we were trying to make the unit that we were developing a little bit more responsive to the actual audience that we were going to be providing it to, and that was a primarily Latino version. That's not to whitewash, poor choice of words, the content that was created. Or the history of the Filipino contribution. We kind of didn't give as much detail about it as possible, but it is in there and it's in the video section. But that said, I mean, all these things could always be improved upon, and I think that's one area that could have been focused on more to give a better perspective about the true nature of that movement.
So there's another question that kind of related to that about how this includes the march in the South and also stuff in California. And do you see that would it make sense just to skip the work in the South and actually just focus on California to make it more immediately relevant?
I felt like we were kind of, we were trying to make sure that we were giving a California focus as much as possible or whenever possible through this unit. The students who are working on this civil rights unit were, like as Phyllis had mentioned, reading the book March, the graphic novel March, which is again focused on the civil rights movement in the South. And so as to sort of make it a little bit more contextual for the students themselves who are going to be interacting with this unit, we decided to shift it towards California. Does that mean that's the only approach? Probably not. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. We just felt like for the context that we were teaching to, it made a little bit more sense to make the experiences potentially more personal.
And also, if there are people here that are listening from other parts of the country, I would take this idea and localize it. The kids really make a lot of connections to when we did the World War II one, and they're right next to Port Chicago, practically where Juvenile Hall is, and they were just amazed when they did the lesson on Port Chicago that it was across the freeway from where they were. So, you know, localizing your curriculum really helps kids connect with history and realize that they're part of it. So yeah, and there are a few lessons in the context lesson of the civil rights one that deals with Brown v. Board and the double V, and sort of makes it a little bit more global and not just about California.
So just one more question, a couple more questions about the process. Do you see this being assigned, like in terms of the way you were assigning it through that electronic version, being assigned week by week, or giving them the whole unit? It might be overwhelming, the person's asking.
Yeah, can I fill this one, Phyllis? I would think that you don't want to maybe, it's going to depend on your kids, right? So if you rolled out the entire like map of units to students, I wouldn't encourage that at all. I feel like the way that we had broken it down in terms of like the specific lesson, like each lesson had 3.1, 3.2, like maybe sharing like those in increments makes a little bit more sense, as opposed to sort of overwhelming the students with a lot of links and a lot of assignments. I mean, on a paper version, if you were to give a student an entire textbook, they would, you know, shrink. And so we typically will give kids like a little bit like smaller, more digestible, easy to access chunks. I would think the same thing goes, the same mentality works with the digital versions, and, you know, just give them as many of the links and as many of the assignments as makes sense for the time period that you're going to have them engage with. And in a moment like this, I mean, consider that the students are going to be learning in some difficult circumstances anyway. I would err on the side of being a little bit more friendly and kind to what you're sharing to the kids.
And just the last one that's come in is, would you recommending Google Docs, or what about, I mean, Google Forms? What about just using Google Docs? What's your thought about the preference between the two?
To be honest with you, it really matters on the context that you're providing the instruction. So for me, when I was teaching at the school I taught in Oakland, there was a big problem where there was a lot of students who were often absent and would be gone for like long stretches and would return. And so to bring them up to speed would, of course, like, you know, divert your attention from other students who were in the class the entire time. So what I would have them do is sort of continue with the regular instruction, but have the kids who are away or separated for whatever reason to kind of do a little bit of playing catch up with those independent sort of units, which is what I based our assignments on. The independent units that study units that my students who were falling behind would engage with. That seems to be the approach that was useful in that context, and I think it would work in a lot of different contexts, including some of the ones that we're facing.
So I've allowed the ability of participants to unmute themselves. So I think at this point, if people want to just chime in and go directly, just unmute yourself and talk, ask questions and comments.
Yes, please.
Jason, I love this. It's amazing. Kids can learn so much through this lesson. All kinds of kids. Do you also integrate like ESOL strategies in there?
That's a great question, Debbie. That's my Titi, by the way. That's my aunt. Hi, Titi. So
You call me Debbie. He calls me Titi. Okay.
Actually, that's one of the deficits that we have in there, because what we were trying to do was create a unit that would be useful for the context of the students that we were specifically focusing on. If I had an ability to and more time or energy to do that, I would definitely change the way that these units are rolled out, and especially in terms of literacy strategies, to make it more friendly for English language learners. There's a lot of ways to do that, not necessarily the ways that we demonstrated with these, but some of them may be useful for students.
Yes, I think I saw some things in there that, and it will work out great with ESE students as well, the short span, just the words, the video, the visual. It's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you.
Paul Taylor has his hand up. Paul, unmute yourself. Where is he?
Hey, there we go. Hey, Phyllis or Jason, where do we find the link again to those lessons so we can pick and choose? Because I like looking at lesson 6 about activism today.
So the best place to go, so if you look at the Padlet, there's a link there that shows like a links and resources. Do you see that page that's on the Padlet there?
Upper left.
Yeah,
Document.
upper left side of the Padlet. It's the link that's kind of blue.
And I can put the direct link to the resources in the chat as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Devin.
If that's
Doing that again.
Yeah, that's easier to have the direct link just put into the chat. But when you do see that page, you'll see there's a whole spot that says planning resources, and the blank templates are there, as well as the unit map with all the links to the specific parts of it, including the civil rights part. I'm sorry, the current context part with the modern activism. So you can kind of look around there, play with it. They're pretty much set up so that you can't do too much damage. So mess around with it, make copies, do whatever you need. We welcome as many hands and as many people kind of looking over and taking what they need. So long as it's useful for you, please employ it.
Oh, I also would just want to address one of the things that for Debbie that we didn't talk about, which is that when you do the headings and highlights in a classroom setting, you often have the kids read through the text and circle the words that they're uncertain of. So you can do a clarification and a vocabulary activity before you actually start to have them work on the main idea and the and choosing evidence. So there's that clarification. I'm not certain what that would look like online, but I'm sure that if you were interacting with a kid online and doing it with them for special ed, that you could do that with them. Okay. Have them do that clarification piece.
All right, thank you.
Did anyone else have any other questions?
Paul has his hand up.
Okay. Paul, go ahead. Paul, we might need to unmute you. All right, Paul, I think we're unmuting you now. No? Okay.
Unmute him. I think you have to unmute yourself, Paul.
So you took care of me. Thank you. I just need to unraise my hand.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so someone else had his hand up there.
I don't know how to put my hand up.
Okay, well, go ahead, just jump in.
Okay, thanks. So Devin was asking about Google Docs versus the forms. And I don't know, I mean, if you're using Classroom, Google Docs are fine, but if you're not using Classroom or something that collects everything, the forms are much nicer because you have everyone on one page rather than, you know, like right now I can't use Classroom with one of my classes. And so I get like millions of Google Docs in, and then I have to like go, okay, which class is this for? And it's a nightmare. I like that idea of using the forms. Thanks, Jason.
Cool. Emily's next. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Was I correct in hearing this is the only one you guys have digitized?
Well, in terms of, yeah, putting the Google Forms in Google, the other ones have the links in them for the sources. They just don't, they're not as tricked out and beautiful as this one.
It's pretty beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so we could use the documents, but we'd have to send the other stuff sort of a little bit more clunkily is what you're saying?
You could use the lesson map with the kids because it has all the documents and the strategies on them.
Right. Okay.
And if you have any free time, you can help us trick it out.
Well, yeah, well, I wouldn't say all that, but like it's so the one thing that I do like about the maps that we have shared on the resource page is that when you look on the slides underneath the maps, it actually does kind of give you like a little bit of a direction on like click this to get this, and it sort of navigates you through as a very basic version of like what you should, or the approach to get at what we showed you today. And if that stuff is unclear, at the bottom of it, it has email address of myself and Phyllis. And in terms of process, we'd be happy to sort of help you navigate whatever it is you're trying to do. I even made like a little bit of an instructional video in the workshop resources showing like what we click to get all those different things. And so if that's easier just to review and just watch the YouTube video of what I did, that may be answering some of the questions as well.
Hey guys, Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I went to I cut and pasted the bit.ly and opened it up, but none of the links work to be able to go through and get resources. And I don't see the Padlet, but maybe I just got a wrong view up or something. The Padlet is like the little, let's see what happens. Yeah, that's the encryption thing. So anyway.
All right, well, let's see what we can do to fix that.
Yeah, okay. So do you see that link that was just put into chat right now by Devin?
Yes, that's the same one, isn't it?
Okay, so what happens when you click that? Just nothing is happening at all?
Well, let me see no, this is actually questions. The resources one is what I had up, I'm sorry.
It's the same, oh, I see. The resource exists on the Padlet as well as existing independently. You might have to copy and paste the link if it doesn't automatically open for you.
That's what I'm doing right now. Let's see what's going to happen here. Questions. And
Any other questions while he's working on that?
no, I see there is the comments, but still looks like no links. Maybe let's see if I open this up.
Click on the document that's in the far upper left corner under the workshop docs. It says links and resources, and that should open. You can open it even in a new window if you'd like. And that is the same document as the resource page.
Right. Actually, if I can maybe just guide, just so you can see, like, I'm going to share the screen with you all again. Can you see the screen? Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can't share.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen just so I can, just because I want to make sure that everyone kind of has an opportunity to see what we're talking about. So going back to our question list is here. So if you are able to get to the Padlet page, the Padlet page will look like this. And this is where people have been posting questions the entire time. If you post a question there, it should be visible to us right now. But if you want to see the entire set of links and resources that I've been describing to you, on the Padlet page is on the far left side under workshop docs, links and resources should provide like a little pop-out page that looks like this. And if that's too small, you don't want to deal with that, you can open in a new window and then it'll show you the full array of all the workshop links that we've been dealing with, including the presentation that we showed you, the unit map that Phyllis sort of navigated, the lesson guide example for that lesson 3 with all the different things for Latinos in the civil rights movement, a video showing you how to actually play around with all the resources there, and again, a calendar of the events. The templates of all the things that we were looking at that sort of look like this, and some of the guideposts for historical thinking, some other details about the instructional strategies are there as well. So for the most part, everything that you would need to sort of recreate or sort of play around with what we showed you today should be on this resources page, which again is linked within the Padlet right over here.
Jason, just real quick, was there a sense of other were there links to other unit maps, or is it just the unit one that we worked, the civil rights one we worked on today?
So we just shared the civil rights one, mostly because what we were trying to accomplish today was to give a model of what this is. We're currently working on for other I guess accounts or other orders that some folks have asked of us to create different units along the same lines, and those are in progress, not necessarily one that looks like that. But I mean, what we're really just showing you today is the framework for you to bring in your content.
Great, thank you.
I think Miguel had a question.
Yeah, I think the biggest question in my mind is how can we facilitate conversations amongst students? For example, like the heading assignment, if we were to do that maybe like for our own classroom, or if there's any particular like online place where students can post their heading and then other students can comment. I don't know if you have.
So let me, since I've been online so much in the last 3 weeks, I have a couple of ideas. One is, and I know that I think Google Meeting does it also, but Zoom has the breakout rooms just as we had today. So you could assign the reading, have them go to that breakout room, have conversations about what they, what headings they came up with. And the other thing that we found, because I've taught a few classes at UC using the Zoom also, is that if you link a Google Doc into the chat, and then you send people out to the breakout rooms, you can actually listen. I mean, well, you can listen because you can jump around, but you can actually see what the groups are talking about because it's a shared Google Doc. And rather than having them make copies for their breakout rooms, you can see what every breakout room is writing about whatever your question is. So if they were putting a heading in or it was a comprehension question, the kids are talking amongst themselves and then they're adding to that Google Doc. And that's been a pretty, then you come back as a whole group and you say, well, which someone in group one, do you want to defend why you chose to make, whatever your heading is, and then they get the mic and they talk about what evidence they use to decide on that heading. So that's one idea.
Can I add a thought to that, which is because I think encouraging conversation is really important. And if you did it in one breakout session and within that session you came up with one heading, then there's a way in Google where you can reshuffle up the kids into a second breakout grouping, but it's with a different group of kids. So now in that group of kids, each one is coming in with their own question that they developed with the first group. And then in that group, they need to come up with a consensus. So they've had the practice of having had the conversation already, especially for language learners. They've heard the dialogue, they've heard the language, they've been able to articulate it in that context. And now they're in a new context and they have to come up with a consensus again. So it kind of lets them go deeper and be able to work off of the understanding that kind of developed earlier.
You could also use that to jigsaw things.
That's like a jigsaw, yeah.
Put them in one group and then reshuffle them and have them teach each other. Any other questions, comments?
Was there an assessment?
What's that?
Was there a summative assessment for this unit?
The writing. And I would actually, if I was in a regular classroom, I would extend that writing. I would ask them to write multi-paragraphs. It's just that the kids in the court schools and the community schools have such struggles with writing without a huge amount of guidance. Asking them for a paragraph is about what you can get successfully, though I have noticed that the kids that have been incarcerated for a long time and have done many of these units now are writing multi-paragraph essays. So yeah, I think that you could also add in some other kinds of assessments to this. It's just the context that we were in, we didn't have it. It's really the work that's the assessment, right? The formative assessment. Anything else? Any other questions or comments that people have?
If those are all the questions, then one last time, I do want to share our information again. Phyllis and I work for the UC Berkeley History, and Devin work for the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project. And I believe on the links and resource pages that you have been shared, there is information to contact us and follow up with us if there's any other questions or concerns or just things that you want to give as far as feedback. We'd love to improve what we're working on. So if you see a way that we can make what we're working on even better, we are all ears. So definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you again, Devin.
Yeah, good to see you all. Hang in there.
Yeah, take care. Stay
I'll
safe.
hit you up, Phyllis.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, cool. All right. Hey, Devin, I have a question for you. Is Devin here? Is Devin still in the place?
It looks like he's still there, but I don't see him.
I've been muted.
Okay.
But let's I'm just gonna end the session for some people who are
maybe just idle.
Yeah.
because I was wondering, like, I don't actually know. I'm looking at the poll and I don't know how
There you go. Okay, it's just us in there now.
It's just us.
I don't know how to share, or how do I save the, do I just hit share results, or how do I save the poll result? And then we use a share.
That's a good question. Let's see what happens when we press share.
Okay, that shares it with all.
That shares it with the attendees. That doesn't do what we want. I think there's a way to save the poll results.
Okay.
I love it that two
Might be in
people
the
came in.
setting.
It wasn't so helpful.
Sorry.
What's that again?
Oh, I'm looking at how helpful was it. Two people thought it wasn't so helpful.
Yeah.
You never know, right? Like the technology might have just been overwhelming to them.
So Jason, I'm not quite sure exactly how to save it. So you might want to do a couple, like 3 screenshots.
Yeah, I was going to say do a
just to be
screenshot.
safe.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can figure out how to do that. Great job, you guys.
Wow.
That was excellent. That was just incredible. Very, very clear. Very good. Thank you. That was excellent.
Well, I'm happy that we got it done. I'm happy that it's also over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did a wonderful job.
All right. Well,
Well, thank you. Thanks both of you guys. That was really amazing. That was a lot of work to get there. But I think that there were 108 people there at one point.
Yeah,
So
over 100 people.
That was good.
And I'll tell you, I don't think this should ever be done without that third person on screens, because I was working the whole time, as you know, Jason, because you did it. So
yeah, like, because there's so much time that and energy you spend just making sure that people are admitted to the room, much less anything else. So that ring just keeps ringing off the hook the entire time. You're just like,
And I think because when we did it with Phyllis last time, I was presenting, but I was also host. But having you guys not be hosts meant I could do some other, because there's things that co-hosts can't do. So I think this arrangement works really well.
Well, why don't you, if you want to do a headings and highlights one, why don't the three of us collaborate on it again?
Well, I would love to do that and play with the digital version of it.
Yeah, do the digital version so they can see how to use Google Docs with it.
Right.
Right.
I have an extension on it, which might be a separate one, but it could also be in the same one. But yeah, we could yeah.
Script it out, make your slides and script it out, and then we could go through it like we did today. And then we can even jump in so that you don't have to talk the whole time, right?
Yeah, no, that's
recording,
good.
by the way.
Sorry?
Let's stop recording, by the way.
I think
good idea.